He didn't have a forehand. He didn't have a backhand. In fact, by every coaching manual in existence, Fabrice Santoro physically shouldn't have been able to hit a tennis ball. Yet, he became the craziest shooter the sport has ever seen. While his rivals used brute force and 140-mile-an-hour serves, Santoro used a racket setup that defied every professional standard, and a technique that defied the laws of physics. He didn't just play the game, he broke it. This is the story of the man who turned professional tennis into his own personal magic show. To find out how this happened, we need to go back to 1978. La Seine-sur-Mer, southern France. A 6-year-old boy walks into his father's tennis club at a military port in Toulon. His father, a former footballer turned tennis teacher, hands him a racket. The problem? The racket is too heavy. Not slightly too heavy. Way too heavy for a 6-year-old to swing with one hand. So the kid does the only logical thing. He grabs it with both hands. On the forehand side, then on the backhand side. And nobody corrects him. That boy is Fabrice Santoro. And that accidental workaround, born out of a child's physical limitation, becomes the most disruptive technical weapon professional tennis has ever seen. By 1989, Santoro turns professional at age 16. He plays his first Grand Slam at the French Open. He doesn't stop until 2010. That's 21 years, 70 Grand Slam appearances, an all-time male record that broke Andre Agassi's previous mark of 62, a record Santoro surpassed at the 2008 Australian Open. He competed in Grand Slams across 4 different decades, and he did all of it with a technique that every coach on earth would have corrected on day 1. So here is the central question of this video. How does a player with zero conventional power, 2 hands on both sides, and a longer than average racket beat 18 different world number 1 players? More than any player who never reached number 1 himself? The answer is not what you think. Let's break down exactly what Santoro was doing, because most people who watched him never fully understood what they were seeing. Point 1. The two-handed forehand. Santoro was right-handed. Standard tennis says your dominant hand drives the forehand. Santoro ignored that completely. His grip, continental grip in the right hand at the bottom of the handle, left hand positioned high above it. Biomechanically, this mirrors a left-handed backhand slice. It is an entirely different kinetic chain than anything in any coaching textbook. Here is the critical detail. His right wrist stayed firm, almost locked, with an open racket face. The left hand provided leverage and control. And post-contact, the left hand often took over to accelerate the racket head through the ball. No wrist snap, none. Standard coaching teaches that a forehand requires a full wrist snap and topspin rotation to generate pace and depth. Santoro replaced that wrist action with body rotation and shoulder turn. The result? He sacrificed raw power. But he gained something far more dangerous. Point 2. The disguise. From the same grip, the same preparation, the same body position, Santoro could produce a slice, a drop shot, a lob, a floater, or a drive. Every single shot looked identical until the moment of contact. Power players would load up for a hard return and receive a drop shot. Defenders would read a drop shot and get a deep floater that pushed them behind the baseline. The declaration of shot type came so late, at or after contact, that opponents were essentially guessing. And against a player like Santoro, guessing is losing. Point 3. The racket. While most ATP professionals use standard 27-inch frames, Santoro played with a customized Prince racket extended to 28 inches. This wasn't a preference, it was engineering. That extra inch gave him the reach and swing weight stability he needed without adding the static weight that would have destroyed his arm. At the 2007 Paris-Bercy Masters, his setup was clocked at 328 grams with a neutral balance, a precise tool designed for one purpose: to neutralize power through physics. He switched to this custom build in 2003 to save his career, proving that in tennis, the right equipment is a weapon of survival. Now here is where this story shifts completely, because everything we just described, the unconventional grip, the lack of wrist snap, the extreme frame length, the absence of power, every analyst, every commentator, every coach watching Santoro would have called those flaws. They were not flaws, they were the strategy. Let's go to Monte Carlo, 1998. Clay court. Pete Sampras, the greatest server in the history of the sport, the reigning world number 1, walks onto the court against Santoro. Sampras had just beaten Agassi in the previous round. He is at the peak of his powers. The match lasts 66 minutes. Final score 6-1, 6-1. Santoro wins. He commits only 8 unforced errors in the entire match. 8 against the world number 1. Sampras is so stunned by what he just experienced that he gives Santoro a nickname on the spot, the Magician. Think about what happened in that match. Sampras' entire game was built on dominance. The serve, the forehand, the net approach. He needed pace to work with. He needed rhythm. Santoro gave him none of it. Every ball came back at a different speed, a different height, a different angle. Sampras couldn't find his timing because Santoro never gave him the same ball twice. And this was not an accident. This was the system. Now go to Toulouse, 1999. An 18-year-old Roger Federer, already showing the talent that would make him the greatest of all time, faces Santoro. Santoro wins 6-3, 7-6. Observers described the match as a circus-like spectacle. Federer himself later recalled that Santoro sizzled him up with his slice. Think about that. The player who would go on to win 20 Grand Slams, the player with arguably the most complete game in tennis history, described being sizzled up by a man using a technique that shouldn't work. And Santoro's record against Marat Safin tells the same story. Safin, two-time Grand Slam champion, former world #1, one of the most physically gifted players of his generation, went 2 wins and 7 losses against Santoro. 7 losses. No quote needed. That number says everything. Here is the pattern. The players who had everything, the serve, the power, the physique, the ranking, consistently struggled to solve Santoro because they were trained to play against conventional tennis. Santoro was not playing conventional tennis. He was playing a completely different game on the same court. The conventional approach says, generate power, control the rally, force errors. Santoro's approach said, disrupt rhythm, control time, make the opponent solve a problem they have never practiced against. Every coaching manual in the world teaches players to read their opponent's preparation and predict the shot. Santoro's preparation was unreadable. The same swing, the same grip, 5 different shots. You cannot defend what you cannot predict. And the deeper tactical layer, the one that almost nobody talks about, is what that technique did to Santoro's body. The two-handed grip eliminated the wrist snap that causes most arm and shoulder injuries in professional tennis. Body rotation replaced explosive wrist action, distributing physical load across larger muscle groups, the core, the shoulders, the legs, instead of concentrating it in the elbow and wrist. The defensive slice-heavy style meant fewer high-impact full-extension shots per match, less physical stress per point, less physical stress per match, less physical stress per year, multiplied across 21 years. That is not a coincidence. That is engineering. While his contemporaries were managing injuries, taking rest periods, and watching their bodies break down under the demands of modern professional tennis, Santoro kept playing. 1989 to 2010, 70 Grand Slams, 4 decades. He reached a career high of world number 17 in August 2001. He won 6 ATP singles titles and 24 doubles titles. He won the Australian Open doubles in 2003 and 2004 with Mikkel Laudrup. He won the 2005 French Open mixed doubles with Daniela Hantuchova. 470 singles wins, over $10 million in career prize money. All of it built on a technique that a 6-year-old invented because the racket was too heavy. So what is the actual lesson here? Michael Chang proved in 1989 that you don't need the biggest serve to win a Grand Slam. Fabrice Santoro proved across 21 years that you don't need conventional technique to dominate the best players on earth. What both of them understood, and what most players never figure out, is that tennis is not a test of who hits the hardest. It is a test of who makes the opponent most uncomfortable. Chang weaponized endurance to wear opponents down. Santoro weaponized confusion, turning every ball into a question they couldn't answer. The conventional player asks, how do I hit this ball harder? Santoro asked, how do I make this ball impossible to read? That is a fundamentally different sport. And the players who tried to outpower him, Sampras, Safin, a teenage Federer, found out the hard way that power is useless when you cannot find your rhythm. Pete Sampras called him the Magician. That nickname is more accurate than Sampras probably intended, because a magician's power is not in what they do, it is in what the audience cannot see. Santoro's opponents saw the same preparation every time. They never saw the shot coming. That is not a flaw in technique. That is the highest form of tactical intelligence in professional tennis. And it lasted 21 years. Fabrice Santoro retired after the 2010 Australian Open at age 36. He did it all with 2 hands on both sides, an extended-length racket, and a technique born in a military port tennis club in southern France when a 6-year-old couldn't hold a racket properly. Champions turn their limitations into weapons. Fabrice Santoro turned his into an art form. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Who is the most technically unconventional player you have ever watched? And don't forget to subscribe for more breaking coverage of the stories that are reshaping our tennis world. Thanks for watching. This is KT Tennis. We'll see you in the next one.